So I was going to talk about the laws of the universe, but we had this meeting, this MSK 35-year anniversary meeting this weekend, and it got me thinking about some shit. So I'm going to shift gears and talk about the power of proximity, like putting yourself around people. And I have a bunch of examples here. I'm going to mix this a little bit with graffiti and business and things like that, and personal relationships. So let's just start with MSK. So, like I said, we had our 35th anniversary meeting. MSK was actually started in 88, but it was kind of dormant up until about 93. And so the MSK, if you're familiar with MSK, the MSK that you are familiar with sort of really kicked off in 93. I think I went over the backstory of that before, so I'm not going to get too detailed about it. But when that first iteration of MSK was kind of, I don't know if that's the right term, but when that was all put together in 93, they put a bunch of guys down. You know, it was Gank, Fate, Havoc, Saber, Eclipse, Baba, and Gone. I think it was those 7 people. And then maybe 3 months, I think it was about 3 months after that, I got put on. So 93 is when we were all up and coming. All those guys were further along than me. So I had been writing for a couple of years, but I was just a toy. And GK took me under his wing, and, you know, he must have seen some potential, because he, I don't know what the word is, nominated me to get put on the crew. And everybody, well, I don't know if everybody, I mean, they put me on. I don't know if everybody agreed or not, but anyway, I got put on, and I was pretty bad I was really bad at the time. Like I cringe when I see that old shit. And the only reason that I'm comfortable posting it is because it's fucking 30 years old. So it's like, whatever. I would imagine a lot of people listening aren't even 30 years old. So, but anyway, so the power of proximity, let's just get into it. I'm already kind of rambling. So that was my first real, that I can really remember. I mean, obviously I have other ones, because at the time I was a teenager, so I had lived some life. So I must have had some experience with this proximity and the benefits of it. But this is the first one that really stands out. So I got on in MSK 30 years ago, and I was a toy, but I was just immediately sort of thrusted into this culture, the real graph game. So I was kind of like fucking around, you know, doing toy shit. And then all of a sudden, not only am I from this crew, and when I say MSK, like, obviously it's not the MSK that it is now. It was a relatively unknown crew, you know, in 93. Most people didn't know, had never heard of it. So we were getting we were laying the groundwork, laying the foundation for the crew that you know today. And so one of the things about it is, while everybody in MSK was up and coming, and again, just to reiterate, they were much further along than me, but they were all still up and coming. Like GK was probably like 15 years old. But MSK was linked up with AWR, and so AWR was a much more established crew, and it was one of the more talented crews out there. And we were also sort of linked up with ICR, also some very, very talented people in that crew, and there was some crossover with ICR and AWR. So anyway, we were meeting with, when MSK would have a meeting, it was a meeting with MSK, AWR, and ICR. So I'm sitting, you know, we would do it in the park and shit like that, like, you know, Motor Yard Park or different places. And so I'm around all of these people, these really heavy hitter people. And so being around people that are further along than you, it does a lot of different things. Like, one, it really forces you to step up your game if you really want to keep up. You know, I was really far behind all of these people, so it really forced me to work really hard to try to earn my way in. You know, even though I was already in the crew, you know, I felt like I had to earn my spot. And so with mentorship, obviously GK mentored me and Eclipse mentored me. So that kind of mentorship will definitely shorten the timeline in graffiti and business and pretty much anything. You know, if you want to get in shape and you hire a personal trainer, they're probably going to get you there faster than, you could get there on your own. And the same thing with graffiti and business and pretty much everything. So I was moving very quickly. So within a few months, I went from, looking at my shit and it was really cringy how terrible it is to, having some stuff that was actually getting me props on the street. I was out there, hitting the streets, the freeways and the freights and all that stuff. And with the help of mentorship, I was able to get some pretty respectable letters out there. Not that, obviously not the best, but they were, I don't know, losing my train of thought here. So obviously the mentorship is very helpful, but at the same time, being in proximity to all these people and having all these people that you're trying to not so much catch up with, but just earn your way into this group, earn their respect. It forces you to work very, very hard. So I worked really hard for quite a few years. I did a lot of graffiti and tried to make a name for myself and name for the crew that we were laying the foundation for. And the other thing about this whole thing of surrounding yourself with people that are further along, and this applies to anything, it gives you something to model. So once you're around all of these people, you're going to find people that are kind of where you want to be. So you can look at their behaviors, like, are they sketching a lot? How often do they paint? What are some of the different techniques they use? Obviously you're not going to bite them, but there's behaviors that you can model that will help you get there. And you learn that by being around people that are further along than you or where you want to be. So by observing people and being around them and being motivated by them and sort of modeling their behavior, that's really going to fast track your progress. So I want to go over a couple different things, a couple of different examples, but this doesn't have to be around a lot of people. Like I think about being in proximity to my girlfriend, Jessie. I'm constantly trying to level up to be, a better man in this relationship. You know what I mean? I want to make sure I'm being the best partner for her. And, being in proximity to somebody that makes you want to do that is very powerful, So I'm always trying to keep an eye on myself and make sure I'm not getting complacent. It's kind of easy to do, especially in like a personal relationship. After years and years go on, I think it's pretty common to get complacent. And so I find myself with her never ever wanting to be complacent. And anytime I feel myself sort of slipping, and maybe, for example, if I'm out with her and I find myself not being present, I make sure I try to snap myself back into it and remind myself, like, I'm lucky to be sitting here with her. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm, being the best that I could be. So, and that also includes being the best physically and mentally. I work out all the time. I read all the time. Like, that stuff is all part of it. I'm trying to be the best version of myself for her, for everybody on my team, and for you guys too. I mean, I'm trying to spread this information that I find helpful because I think it can help you become the best version of yourself. And that's what we need. I mean, that's what the world needs. Like, there's a lot of complacency and a lot of people that are really kind of slipping into this shit that's, I don't know. I guess I could go off on a little bit of a tangent, but with cell phones and the highly processed foods and all these kind of things, like, we're kind of moving towards being a pretty lazy, complacent society. And that's just there's nothing good about that. So I feel like my contribution to helping fix that is trying to be the best version of myself, and then trying to share any shit that I come across that I find is helpful for me and helping me move forward. And hopefully that helps you move forward also. Next, I wanted to talk about is, in my company, I was thinking about being in proximity to my team. Right now, we had a lot of changes. And so the team is relatively new. I don't have anybody on my current team that has even been with me for a year. My guy Armand has been here for maybe 9 months, and everybody else has been here for less time than that. Some people even only a few weeks. But what I'm seeing is and I was talking to Zach, one of my people. I was reading him a quote about something I read in a book And I've read this quote. This quote comes up in lots of books that I read, and it's something along the lines of, if you can get everybody in an organization rowing in the same direction, you can dominate, or I don't know if it was dominate, but succeed or something like that in any market, anytime, all this kind of shit. So it just basically means like, if you can get everybody heading in the same direction, you're going to be a very strong company. And so the response to the quote in the book was along the lines of, the guy that wrote the book was saying, whenever he says that quote to people, when he's, I don't know if he's a coach or something, when he's talking to team leaders, he says they all nod their head because they agree, but they also have this kind of panicked look in their face because they feel like it's impossible. And I was telling Zach, I was like, we're all rowing in the same direction. So, I mean, we really have something special here in terms of the quality of our team. And so when I'm kind of, the same thing I'm doing here, think about it even more so for the people on my team. I'm trying to encourage everybody and try to be the example for them to all be seeking their true potential. And if we're all doing that as a team, obviously the team is going to be much stronger, and then the company is going to be much stronger, and we're all going to be growing together and making all these big moves. And what's cool about it is, even though I've seen people here for such a short time, the amount of growth that I'm seeing with the team is firing me up. It's the same proximity effect as when people are further along than me. I'm not saying I'm further along than these people. There's probably lots of ways that they're further along than me. I'm older and I've been running a business for longer than them, so I have a little more life experience, but I don't consider myself above them. But at the same time, I'm not looking to them as it's not the same. I guess I could say, I don't want to get too far. It's not the same of being in proximity with, like, when I was younger and in MSK and looking at the AWRs and people that are way further along than me. It's a different thing, but it is equally inspiring to see everybody pushing forward and seeing everybody working hard and running the systems and rowing in the same direction. It's very impressive, especially since the team is all very young. It's just great to see that growth, and I'm feeling like the proximity around them, me being around all of them, is having a similar effect. Makes me want to work harder. It makes me want to push harder and create more opportunities for the whole team to grow. I guess it doesn't have to be, I don't know, that one's kind of weird. It's a little hard to explain. And so I don't know how you could really put yourself in that position. But if you are somebody that runs a team, maybe you could find a way to incorporate that, because I'm finding it super effective in a lot of ways. I mean, it's rewarding to encourage people to try to be the best version of themselves. Because, like, imagine if everybody in the world was actually working hard and not just talking about it, and actually working on being the best version of themselves. Imagine how much of the fuck would the world look like if we were all doing that? I mean, it would be insane. It would be so much better. I mean, obviously it's not possible. There's a certain percentage of people that just suck, and it is what it is. I mean, I'm not trying to be pessimistic or anything, but it's a reality. But imagine if everybody was pushing to achieve their true potential. Shit would be pretty awesome. So we could do that in our own communities and around the people that we're around, whether you lead them or not. And I've said this before in other episodes, whether you may not be a leader of a team, you may not have kids, you may not lead a crew, you may not do all of these things, but somebody's watching you and somebody is looking to you to see what the fuck to do. No matter who you are, even if you're a young kid, you may have a younger brother, you may have a little friend at school or some shit that you're the guy that they look at, or you're the girl that they look at, and they're like, well, I want to see what they're doing so I can see what I'm doing. If you're trying to achieve your true potential and you're pushing hard mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that shit, people around you are going to follow your lead. So you don't have to be, in order to get this effect, it doesn't have to be people that are further along than you. I just happen to, that just happens to be the subject that I was kind of talking about, but I kind of got derailed a little. But I think it's important. Your true potential is what you should all be seeking, and encouraging others to do the same. All right, another one on the business front. So I've been an entrepreneur for 20 some years, and I don't have a lot of, actually, I don't really hang around with a lot of people, to be honest. Like, I don't hang around with hardly anybody. So I'm not surrounded by other entrepreneurs. So when I started, like, I've been running my own businesses for a long time, but I never really studied entrepreneurship. I didn't really start reading until later, a few years ago. And so that's when I was starting to learn about the power of proximity. And I was like, man, I don't really hang around with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't have access to a lot of people that are operating their own businesses. So I ended up joining a group called the Arete Syndicate. It's run by Andy Frisella and Ed Milet. I saw that as a way to kind of more or less virtually get around other entrepreneurs, because you're part of this group, and you're also in this Facebook group. So you have access to people, you can ask questions, and then they give us like learning lessons. It's a thing you have to apply to be a part of. And then it also costs, it's a monthly fee. It wasn't an easy decision to make, especially where I was when I signed up for it. But it ended up being a really good decision, because it actually put me around other entrepreneurs, and I can get that sort of proximity effect where it was sort of missing in my life and my professional career. But what I wanted to talk about here more so than that was they have these. So in addition to the monthly fee, there's an optional thing where you go to these, they call it a summit, and they're really expensive. So when I first saw how much they costed, I was like, I'm never going to fucking pay that kind of money to go to that, to just go fucking listen to people talk. And, I had the wrong idea about it. And maybe not the wrong idea, but my thoughts on it were a certain way. Like, it didn't seem like it was worth the money. But last year one came around, and I was like, man, I just feel like this is something I need. And so I invested the money, and I ended up going. What I realized when I was there is that whole power of proximity thing is really powerful there, because obviously, you're listening to speakers and you're getting information, and that stuff's all good. But actually being in the same room as all these people and having all these conversations, and, the encouragement that you get, and you're able to tell your story to people and listen to other people's stories, and actually got to meet Andy and Ed and all this kind of stuff. As I was leaving, I realized like the investment that I made easily got a return on the investment, because I was applying a lot of that momentum that I had, generated from there. And also there was lessons learned. So that's obviously good. The other thing worth considering is, we've been talking about the positive power of proximity, and I wanted to touch on very briefly the negative power. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard these things. If you're struggling with addiction and you're still hanging around with the same people that you party with, then obviously it's going to be harder for you to get off of it. And there's other things like, they say like you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around with the most. So that could be positive or negative. So like they say, like if you're hanging around with 5 losers, you're going to be the 6th loser. Or if you're hanging around with 5 successful people, you're going to be the 6th. You can see it from both sides. Like this power can be good or bad. So depending on what it is. So that's something that I wanted to just kind of make sure we at least covered, but I was mainly wanting to focus on the positive. I'm going to wrap it up with this last story here, and it's about what happened this weekend. So we had our MSK anniversary meeting, and so pretty much everybody except for a small handful of people from MSK and AWR were there. To be around that many talented people and that many people that have done so many crazy things in the graffiti culture over the last few decades, you can't help but to pick up on all of this energy. So if you think about all of those people together in one place, and I'll get into this in a future episode when I talk about the laws of the universe, but we're all vibrating at this frequency, and you bring all these people together. Imagine how much energy is generated there. And then we put on 13 new people, which is totally crazy. I mean, they were all selected very carefully, and it wasn't just like, we're going to just throw on a bunch of people and see what happens. They were carefully selected, but they were all people that are well known. And if you follow us at all, you'll start to see, and you probably already are seeing stuff on social media, but you have all those people together, and then you bring all these new people into the fold, and all of this energy is being created. and this massive amount of momentum is being created. So now you have that proximity effect for obviously everybody that's been involved. I mean, I've been writing those letters next to my name for 30 years, but I still picked up all of this energy, and everybody else that was there, I feel like picked it up, and you can see it. You can see it in everybody's sort of social medias. Like all of this stuff is coming up. People are going out and painting together, and a huge amount of momentum is being built up among everybody. But then you also have to think all of these 13 new people were in proximity to all of these other people that were repping these crews for a very long time. So even though all of the people that were put on, the 13 people, everybody is all established writers. And GK said something very important at the meeting. He said, all of these people that we're putting on, they do not need us. They're doing just fine on their own. And we don't necessarily need new people either. But when we join forces together, obviously we're going to build something much bigger and push things much further along. And it's already generating a tremendous amount of momentum. So I'm having a hard time buttoning this thing up, but the MSK meeting was what made me sort of think about this whole topic. And so just to reiterate, getting all of those people in the same space was very powerful as far as the amount of energy and momentum that it was created. And then it was even compounded even further by adding 13 new people. And so everybody's all fired up, a lot of people that haven't painted for a very, very long time. We had people there that said they hadn't painted in 20 years. Like I probably hadn't painted in I don't know, I think like 3 months or something like that. So, I mean, I'm nowhere near as consistent as I used to be, but generated a lot of momentum. But anyway, so I wanted to try to suggest some things. What's interesting in the time that we're in now, when it comes to the internet and social media and all that stuff, is you don't have to be a part of any of the things that I'm talking about in order to start using this kind of effect to your advantage. So one thing that I thought that I could make a suggestion, obviously, if you're in a crew or if you're in a relationship or you're in a business and all that stuff, everything that I said applies directly to what you're doing. But let's say you don't have any of that stuff. Let's say you're a solo writer from like a weird little town where there's not a lot of graph writers. You're not in a relationship. You're not in a business, all of these kind of things. What could you do? What's interesting now is, you have the internet, you have social media. Most writers are on Instagram, even if they're not on Instagram, their shit, if they're well known, their shit's out there. One thing that you can do to start getting this kind of thing, and obviously you won't be like in proximity to all of these people physically, or maybe even in communication with them. There's this thing that several people talk about it. There's like the Dream 100 list or the Dream 25 list. And what it is you find a list of people, whether it's or businesses or something, whether it's 100, 25, 50 or whatever you wanted to do. The concept around this is to gather all of these people or businesses that are dream clients for you. And I'll get to how it applies to you in a second, but the idea is you put that together and you try to use that list in a way of, trying to get them to be customers of yours or clients of yours. But what you could do is you could put together, say, let's say a Dream 20 list of writers that you would want to be in proximity to and follow all of them on social media. And you could even get organized with it and keep a list and just always check in on their shit and study their shit and look at how they do things. And as a young writer or an up and coming, it doesn't mean young in age. You could be young in the culture at fucking 40 years old and just starting. It doesn't really matter. But if you're trying to find people to model, and I'm not saying to bite their shit or anything like that, but you find people that are where you want to be and try to observe their behavior, try to see how often they paint, how often they post, how often they do things like this. If they're posting sketches in their stories, you may get an idea of like how they draw, how they do all these kind of things. So you can start to pick up a lot of that stuff, even if you don't have access to these people. And then one thing I did mention in a past episode about mentorship, I would also engage in their content and comment and like and do all of that kind of stuff, because you never know. At some point, if you do that for quite a long time, they may notice you and you may start creating a relationship with those people. You never know. So I wouldn't say don't go jumping in people's DM and say, hey, can I be your friend, or something creepy or weird or anything. But you can get that proximity effect now just by using social media, because a lot of people are sharing what they're doing out there. So you can find a lot of people to model, and you could, I don't know, I think about the things in terms of business systems. So maybe I'm getting in the weeds here, but in order to keep track of that, you really could do that. You could say, I'm going to come up with a Dream 25 list of writers that I would like to model and learn from. Put all of their shit in a spreadsheet and make sure you're checking in on them once a week or whatever and seeing what they're up to, seeing what you can learn from them. I would imagine, I've never done this specifically, but I do this for business, but I would imagine you could get a similar effect. You know, you could be modeling these people and try to shorten your timeline. All right.
Appreciate each and every one of you guys who are supporting the cause and continue to spread the love. And yeah, stay up.